Aqua. Only 10 energems ever existed in the Dino Charge universe, and the teal one spent about a decade buried in a man who refused to use it. James Navarro, played by Reuben Turner, found the Aqua energem roughly 10 years before the series began, and instead of becoming a hero, he vanished, abandoning his young son Tyler to keep the villain's Sledge from tracking him through his family. He finally resurfaced in the 2016 Dino Supercharge episode Roar of the Red Ranger, morphing into the franchise's first and so far only Aqua Ranger, bonded to the Ankylocharger and its armored, club-tailed Zord. The suit is a soft blue-green that reads almost turquoise on camera, deliberately shaded so it would never be mistaken for the team's actual Blue Ranger coda. That distinction is basically the whole legacy. James is a competent fighter and a decent father who came back to fix a mistake, but he is a part-time ranger in a season that already had 10 of them, and his energem is one of the weaker links in a chain where the red energem powers a T-Rex, and the silver one belongs to an alien knight. He fights in maybe a handful of battles, never anchors a Megazord formation, and disappears back into the ensemble. Aqua is the rarest color in Power Rangers history, and rarity here is not the same thing as strength. It is the bottom of the ladder. Graphite. Xandar is a fictional European country invented purely so Power Rangers could have a prince, and that prince is the only person ever to wear this color. Prince Philip III, played by New Zealand actor Jared Blackiston, debuted in the 2016 Dino Supercharge episode Forged Under Fire, bonding with the Graphite Energem and the Pachycharger, named for the Pachycephalosaurus, the thick-skulled dinosaur that fought by ramming its head into things. His suit is a flat metallic gray, dark enough that toy collectors argued for years about whether graphite was a real Ranger color at all, or just a slightly embarrassed way of saying silver. It is real, and it is his alone. Philip trained in fencing and martial arts as part of a royal education which gives him a genuinely elegant sword style, and his introduction has him testing the Rangers rather than joining them, because a monarch does not simply sign up. That arrogance is also his ceiling. He treats Ranger duty as an obligation he fits around ruling a country, appears in only a scattering of episodes, and his headbutting dinosaur motif never translates into anything more devastating than a solid charge attack. Compare him to Ivan, the Gold Ranger of the same team, an 800-year-old knight who spent centuries sealed inside a monster. Philip is the rare color with the royal title, and the thinnest resume behind it: orange. For 30 years and roughly 30 seasons, orange did not exist. Not one official Orange Ranger appeared on television between 1993 and 2023, which is genuinely strange for a franchise that burned through gold, silver, crimson, navy, graphite, and aqua without hesitation. The closest anyone came was Kat Manx in 2005's Power Rangers SPD, the feline alien scientist who actually invented the team's Ranger powers and then briefly morphed herself as the Cat Ranger, in a white and orange suit with cat ears. Fans still argue over whether that counts. The argument ended in 2023 with Cosmic Fury, when Fern, a recurring civilian from Dino Fury, finally became the first official Orange Ranger in the show's history. The team she joined was itself a first: Red Amelia, Blue Ollie, Green Izzy, Black Havy, Gold Ion, and Orange Fern. The first lineup since the very beginning with no pink and no yellow Ranger at all. Fern's power set is standard issue for a modern Ranger, and she arrives in the final season of an era with only a handful of episodes to build a legend in. That is the problem with ranking her. Orange has exactly one entry, no accumulated history, no legacy Zord, no 30-year stack of successors adding weight to the color. It is historically enormous and mechanically slight, which lands it near the floor. Nova. She appeared in one episode, spoke a handful of lines, and left. The SPD Nova Ranger shows up in Endings Part 2, the 2005 series finale of Power Rangers SPD, in a silver-white suit, and both her debut and her final appearance are that same episode. Her origin is the interesting part. She comes from the year 2040, where she served alongside the Omega Ranger, and when he vanished into the past, she began hunting across timelines to find him. That is a search through time itself, conducted alone, by someone who never once explains the technology that makes it possible. When she finally catches up, she does not drag him home immediately. She stays for the last stand, holding back the Crybot army outside Delta Base with Sam, Boom, and the SPD cadets while the B Squad handles Emperor Groom, then attends the promotion ceremony, and steps back through a time portal to 2040 with her partner. Everything else about her is a blank. No name beyond Nova, no established power set, no Zord, no arc. She is a walking implication that the future is full of rangers we will never meet. As a piece of world building, she is one of the show's most tantalizing 5 minutes, and as a measurable power, she is almost nothing, because the show never gave her the room to demonstrate one. Time travel gets her above Graphite. One episode keeps her here. Navy. The Thunder Rangers arrived as villains. In 2003's Power Rangers Ninja Storm, Blake Bradley, played by Jorge Vargas, morphed as the Navy Thunder Ranger with his adoptive older brother Hunter, and their first act was to hunt the heroes, because the alien warlord Lothor had convinced them the Wind Rangers were responsible for their parents' deaths. Blake is the calmer half of that pair, a professional motocross racer whose fighting style borrows the same instincts, all momentum and controlled recklessness. The thunder powers he carries are a genuine step above the Wind Rangers, at the point of introduction, which is why the early Thunder Strangers episodes have 2 Rangers comfortably beating 3. He wields the Thunder Morpher and rides the Tsunami Cycle, and the deep navy blue of his suit is dark enough that it reads as a different color entirely from Tori's blue standing beside him. Then it never came back. Navy has not appeared as a Ranger color in the more than 20 years since Ninja Storm ended, apart from legacy appearances and toy lines, making it one of the true one-off shades. Blake returned once, in the 2004 Dino Thunder crossover Thunderstorm, fighting alongside Tommy Oliver. He is a full-season Ranger with a redemption arc, real combat pedigree and 0 successors, and that combination puts him firmly in the lower half. Crimson. Hunter Bradley, played by Adam Tuominen, is the angrier brother, and crimson is the color that gets closest to red without being allowed to say so. As the Crimson Thunder Ranger in Ninja Storm, Hunter carried the Crimson Blaster and the Thunder Staff, and he spent his opening arc as a full antagonist, brainwashed into believing the Wind Rangers had murdered his parents. Both Bradley brothers were students of the Thunder Ninja Academy, which Lothor stole wholesale, and when Hunter learned the truth, he turned on Lothor with the same intensity he had aimed at the heroes. That intensity is his defining trait. He is consistently written as the strongest raw fighter on the Ninja Storm roster, more aggressive than the Wind Rangers, more willing to escalate, and the show repeatedly puts him in situations where brute force is the answer. He also survived being mind-controlled twice, which is unusual endurance for a series this light. Crimson has slightly better standing than Navy, because the shade recurs in the franchise's later merchandise and legacy modes, and because Hunter's showings are simply louder. Both brothers came back in the 2004 Dino Thunder team-up Thunderstorm to fight beside Tommy Oliver. Still, it is one Ranger, one team, one season of accumulated power. Crimson is a fan-favorite color, with a very short bench. Titanium. This is the one the American producers built from nothing. Every Ranger color before it existed because a Japanese Super Sentai series had already filmed the suit, but the Sentai season adapted into Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue had no 6th Ranger, so in 2000 the American team designed and manufactured an entirely original suit, Morpher and Zord. Ryan Mitchell, played by Rhett Fisher, was the first Power Ranger with no Sentai counterpart at all. His backstory is bleak even by this show's standards. As a child, he was taken and raised by the demon Diabolico, who branded a cobra tattoo across his back that would kill him if he ever turned against his master. Ryan stole the titanium morpher and used it against his own family, before learning that Captain Mitchell was his father, then spent much of the season on the run in the desert, trying to outlive the tattoo. He fights with the titanium laser, and pilots the Max Solarzord, and he is one of the very few Rangers who genuinely operates alone for stretches of a season. In the crossover Time for Lightspeed, he and the Quantum Ranger destroyed the super demon Quarganon together. Titanium has never been used again in the 26 years since. It is the strongest of the truly extinct colors, and it stops right there. Quantum. Quantum is red, wearing a different name. In 2001's Power Rangers Time Force, Eric Myers, played by Daniel Southworth, claimed the Quantum Morpher and became the season's 6th Ranger, and everything about the design signals red. The crimson suit, the black trim, the leader tier gear. What separates him is the hardware. The Quantum Morpher works on numeric voice codes, with Eric dialing sequences into a device shaped like a wrist communicator to trigger different attack modes, and he carries the Quantum Defender, a weapon that shifts between blaster and blade configurations. His Zord is the Q-Rex, a mechanical tyrannosaur recovered from the future that transforms into a Megazord on its own, without needing a 5-Ranger combination. That is the key power argument for this color. Most 6th Rangers supplement a team. Eric fields a full Megazord solo. His personality made it worse for everyone around him, because he began as a bitter rival to Wes, obsessed with proving that a kid from nothing could outrank the son of a billionaire, and he commanded the Silver Guardians as a private security force rather than a hero team. He is shot and nearly killed in the finale, one of the closest calls the franchise has ever staged. Quantum is a rare color with genuine top-tier firepower behind it, and the only reason it does not climb higher is that it belongs to exactly one man. Purple. Purple Rangers barely exist, and the handful who do include some of the most dangerous fighters in the franchise. The first was Robert James, better known as RJ, played by David de la Tour in 2008's Power Rangers Jungle Fury. RJ spent most of that season as the mentor, running a pizza parlor above the Rangers' loft and training 3 martial artists in the Order of the Claw, before his own contained wolf spirit tore loose when his father was threatened, and he morphed as the Violet Wolf Ranger. A mentor who turns out to be stronger than every student he taught is a rare structure in this show, and it gives Purple an immediate ceiling most rare colors never reach. The second major entry is Kendall Morgan from Dino Charge and Dino Supercharge, the team's scientist, who became the first female Purple Ranger after Albert Smith briefly bonded with the Purple Energem and then surrendered it. Kendall's Energem is tied to the Plesio Zord, and she runs the base, builds the weapons, and morphs into the field. Purple has also turned up on villains and alternate universe Rangers in the comics, which is part of the color's reputation as slightly off-pattern. Rare, late arriving, and carrying 2 genuine heavyweights, that is enough to break out of the bottom tier. Shadow. He is a blue-skinned alien dog who commands a police force, and the show calls him the undefeatable Sword of Sirius. Anubis Kruger, universally shortened to Doggy, ran SPD's Earth base through most of 2005's Power Rangers SPD as a mentor figure who explicitly did not morph, carrying the grief of a destroyed homeworld and a wife, Icinia, taken by Emperor Groom. Then General Banog arrived, Kat Manx built him a compact SPD patrol morpher, and Kruger became the Shadow Ranger. His debut is one of the most decisive power demonstrations in the franchise's history. He walks into roughly 100 Crybots alone and dismantles every one of them. His suit is black shot through with dark blue, his weapon is the Shadow Saber, and his fighting style is nothing like the acrobatic flourish of the cadets around him. It is efficient, brutal, and built on centuries of experience the younger Rangers do not have. Kruger is also the only Ranger in this ranking who is simultaneously a commanding officer, which means the show writes him as the person whose judgment the entire cast defers to. Shadow is a color used by exactly one character, in one season, and it still outranks most of the recurring shades, because that one character is arguably the single most competent individual fighter SPD ever put on screen. Omega. The Omega Ranger cannot exist in the present without his suit. Sam, SPD's 6th Ranger, comes from the year 2025, but the version who fights alongside the B Squad has traveled back from a future where he is already a full officer, and his physical body cannot survive in this time period. Unmorphed, he is a floating ball of white light. That is not a stylistic flourish. It is the show's explanation for why the Omega Morpher is the only thing anchoring him to reality, and it makes him the closest thing Power Rangers has ever produced to a being made of pure energy. His signature ability follows from that. The Omega Ranger moves at speeds the other Rangers cannot track, blurring across a battlefield fast enough that opponents fight where he was rather than where he is. He rides the Omega Max cycle, which converts into a Megazord of its own, and his morpher includes a whistle function that summons his Zord directly. Every other color on this list belongs to a person wearing armor. Omega is armor wearing a person. His run is short, confined to the back half of one 2005 season, and he leaves through a time portal at the end with the Nova Ranger, but within that window he is written as a straightforwardly superior class of Ranger. It is the strongest of the ultra-rare colors, and it is not close. Pink. Kimberly Hart put on the pterodactyl suit in 1993 and set the template for a color that has appeared in nearly every team since. Played by Amy Jo Johnson, she carried the power bow, piloted the pterodactyl Zord, and spent 3 seasons as the emotional center of the original lineup, before Catherine Hillard took the coin in 1995 in one of the show's earliest full-role handovers. Pink is often dismissed as the decorative slot, and the franchise's own history contradicts that repeatedly. Jen Scotts led Time Force in 2001, commanding the team as its Pink Ranger and outranking the Red Ranger for most of the season, which makes pink one of the few non-red colors to hold formal team leadership. Carone became Galaxy Pink after spending years as Astronema, the most effective villain the show had produced, and brought that combat experience with her. And in Boom Studios' Shattered Grid comics, the Ranger Slayer, an alternate timeline Kimberly serving Lord Drakon, wields the Bow of Darkness and cuts through Rangers with an ease the television version never approached. Pink also fights with speed and precision rather than force, which the show consistently frames as a lesser style. It broke its streak in 2023 when Cosmic Fury's final team fielded no Pink Ranger at all, the first time in 30 years. Enormous history, mid-tier raw power. Yellow. Trini Kwan, played by Tui Trang, wore the saber-toothed tiger suit in 1993 with the power daggers, and one detail of that costume explains an oddity fans noticed immediately. Her suit had no skirt, because the Japanese footage being adapted featured a male Yellow Ranger, so the American producers had to work around a body that did not match. The color has been far more physically formidable than that awkward start suggests. Katie Walker, Time Force's Yellow Ranger in 2001, was genetically engineered with superhuman strength and routinely lifted objects several times her own weight, making her one of the strongest Rangers in the franchise without needing a Zord. Kira Ford in 2004's Dino Thunder had the Patera Scream, a sonic attack powerful enough to shatter glass and stagger monsters, a genuine offensive superpower rather than a weapon. Taylor Earhart commanded the Wild Force team's aerial assault as the Yellow Eagle Ranger and was the group's first Ranger, predating the Red. Yellow appears in the overwhelming majority of teams and consistently draws the role of the disciplined technician, the one who trains hardest. Like Pink, it lost its guaranteed slot in Cosmic Fury, whose lineup dropped both traditionally female-coded colors. Yellow edges past Pink on the strength of Katie's raw power and Kira's sonic scream. It is still a support color at heart. Black. Zack Taylor swung the Power Axe in 1993, a weapon that converted into a cannon and formed the barrel of the team's combined power blaster, and he fought in a self-invented style he called hip-hop Keto. Black has been quietly upgrading ever since. Adam Park, who took over the Mastodon coin in 1994 and later became Zeo Ranger 4 Green, is regularly voted the best Ranger the show ever produced, a martial artist whose fight choreography stayed sharp across a decade of returns, culminating in the 2010 special, where he morphs one last time with a broken, sparking morpher and forces it to work through sheer will. Danny Delgado, Wild Force's Black Bison Ranger in 2002, was built around straightforward superhuman strength. Most significantly, Tommy Oliver's fourth and final Ranger identity was Black, the Black Dino Ranger of 2004's Dino Thunder, whose brachiomorpher granted invisibility, and whose power once malfunctioned badly enough that he was trapped invisible for episodes. Black is almost always the physical enforcer, positioned as the team's heaviest hitter rather than its fastest, and it appears in the large majority of lineups. It carries no legendary artifact and no franchise-defining upgrade of its own, which caps it. But among the standard colors, Black is the one that hits hardest. Blue. Blue and red are the only two colors that appear in every single Power Rangers team, without exception, from 1993 onward. Billy Cranston, played by David Yost, is the foundation, the Triceratops Ranger, the team's engineer, and the longest-serving member of the original lineup, staying through the Zeo era after every other founder had gone. Blue Rangers are traditionally the intellect, the ones who build the weapons and diagnose the Zords, and the franchise has repeatedly used that as a springboard rather than a limitation. Tori Hansen broke the pattern in 2003 as the first female Blue Ranger. The Blue Centurion is a robotic police officer from the year 2000 who arrives in Turbo with a warning about the future, an entire Ranger who is not human at all. And then there is Ninjor, the blue armored being who forged the original power coins and built the Ninja Zords, meaning the entire Mighty Morphin power set traces back to a character wearing this color. Ninjor fought Rita and Zed's forces directly and survived being sealed inside a jar for thousands of years. Blue also fields Kai Chen, TJ Johnson, Ali Akana, and dozens more across 3 decades. Universal presence, a creator-tier figure in its ranks, and a consistent second-in-command role. It is the strongest of the core colors that is not a designated upgrade. Green. The Green Ranger changed what this show was. Tommy Oliver arrived in the 5-part 1993 story Green, with Evil as Rita Repulsa's brainwashed weapon, wearing the dragon shield and carrying the dragon dagger, a flute-shaped blade that summoned the Dragon Zord out of the ocean by playing a melody. The Dragon Zord fought the Megazord to a standstill, which no monster had managed, and the arc is still the most famous stretch of television the franchise ever produced. What makes Green fascinating from a power standpoint is that it was deliberately built to fail. The Green Ranger powers were finite, engineered by Rita with a limit, and the show spent an entire season draining them, with Tommy losing the ability to morph, regaining it temporarily through Zordon's intervention, and finally watching it die for good. Green also fields Cam Watanabe, who traveled back in time to claim the Samurai Amulet and become the Green Samurai Ranger in Ninja Storm, and Adam Park in his Zeo incarnation, and Damon, Ziggy, and Izzy across later teams. The color carries a permanent association with the 6th Ranger role and with power that arrives from outside the team, usually hostile first. Green sits this high because the Dragon Shield and Dragon Zord combination remains one of the most destructive packages any single Ranger has ever held. Silver. Zane spent 2 years frozen. Power Rangers in Space introduced the franchise's first Silver Ranger in 1998 as a warrior from the destroyed planet KO-35 who had been critically injured, saving Andros and placed in cryogenic sleep, waking to find his best friend fighting alone. He carried the Silverizer and its upgraded Super Silverizer, piloted the Mega Winger, and was written as flatly stronger than the 5 Rangers he joined, capable of taking on monsters solo that the full team struggled with. Silver became the franchise's shorthand for the outsider who outclasses the team. Merrick Balaton, Wild Force's Lunar Wolf Ranger, was a 3,000-year-old warrior who defeated an ancient evil by wearing a cursed mask that consumed him. Gem and Gemma arrived in RPM as gold and silver twins who had been experimented on and left half feral. Orion came from the destroyed planet Andracia in Super Megaforce. Zenowing in Dino Charge was an alien knight literally split in half by evil energy. Steel in Beast Morphers was a robot built from a Ranger's DNA. Almost every Silver Ranger is an alien, a machine, or a survivor of a dead world, and almost none of them are ordinary. The color has been used sparingly, across roughly 9 teams, and it has never once been given to a normal recruit. Gold. The first Gold Ranger was 3 people at once. Trey of Triforia arrived in 1996's Power Rangers Zeo as an alien prince whose planet's champions exist as a trinity, and when he was injured his body split permanently into Trey of Heart, Trey of Courage, and Trey of Wisdom, 3 separate beings who could not remerge, forcing him to transfer the Gold Ranger powers to Jason Lee Scott, the original Red Ranger. What Trey brought with him was Pyramidus, a golden pyramid carrier Zord and one of the physically largest machines in franchise history, capable of transporting entire Megazords and forming the Zeo Ultrazord. His weapon, the Golden Power Staff, fires energy strong enough to end fights the team could not. Gold has been the designated power tier color ever since. Antonio Garcia built his own morpher from scratch in Samurai, the only Ranger ever to do so. Levi Weston fought in Ninja Steel with a guitar-shaped weapon. Nate Silva in Beast Morphers was a teenage genius who engineered his own Ranger technology. Ion in Dino Fury was a Sporix-era warrior thousands of years old. Gold Rangers are typically the last piece a team receives, the reinforcement that resolves a losing war, and they are almost always framed as the second most powerful person on screen. There is only one color above it: white. Zordon made this one out of light. After Tommy's Green Ranger powers were destroyed, the 1994 story White Light had Zordon and Alpha 5 forge an entirely new Ranger from the light of goodness, a power source explicitly beyond Rita and Lord Zed's ability to corrupt, which is the single most important detail about the color. The White Tiger Ranger could not be turned. Tommy carried Saba, a talking sword with laser-firing eyes who piloted the White Tiger Zord independently and openly criticized his own wielder, and he took over as team leader from Jason. White became the franchise's upgrade color, the visual signal that the show had reset the power ceiling. It has appeared in only around 8 teams in more than 30 seasons, which keeps it genuinely rare. Trent Fernandez in Dino Thunder used a Drago morpher corrupted by evil energy, fought the team as a villain for a substantial arc, and could generate energy copies of himself and turn invisible. Udana in Mystic Force was the White Mystic Ranger and the team's mentor, wielding the Snow Staff, a sorceress who had been fighting since before her students were born. Alyssa Enrelay held the White Tiger power in Wild Force. Rare, sacred, incorruptible, and reserved almost exclusively for characters the show wants you to understand are operating above everyone else. Red. Every team has one. Across more than 3 decades and 30-plus seasons, red is the only color besides blue that has never been skipped, and it is the only one that is always the leader by default. Jason Lee Scott started it in 1993 with the Tyrannosaurus Zord and the Power Sword, and the line runs unbroken through Rocky, TJ, Andros, Leo, Carter, Wes, Cole, Shane, Connor, Nick, Mac, Casey, Scott, Jaden, Troy, Tyler, Brody, Devin, Zato, and Amelia. Red gets the Battlizers, the personal armor upgrades that no other color receives as standard, starting with Andros in 1998 and continuing through nearly every season since. Red pilots the primary Zord that forms the Megazord's torso. And in 2002, Wild Force aired Forever Red, in which 10 Red Rangers from across the franchise's history assembled on the moon to destroy the last remnant of the Machine Empire and the enormous serpent Zord Serpentera, the largest machine the show had ever built. 10 Reds. No other color has ever been given a story like that, because no other color has 10 entries the audience would recognize on sight. Red is not the rarest, the strangest, or the most mysterious. It is simply the color the entire franchise is built to point at, and after 30 years of upgrades, Battlisers, and legendary powers, nothing outranks it. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.